Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com. If you are a Roku owner and own a Roku box, I have the videos up on Roku now too at a couple of sites. The latest is Dwyer Sports Betting, one word. You can add that private channel. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. For me, the story this weekend wasn't Donaire blowing out Jorge Arce. Donaire delivered for us. The recommended play there was to straddle Donaire by KO against Jorge Arce by KO. And Nonito didn't even keep you waiting. He blew out Arce in 3 rounds. You didn't even have to stick around to round 6, 7, or 8. Right? Let me just say, Donaire did what Donaire does. Understand, Donaire is very big for his weight class. You can tell that just by looking at how quickly he reached for a bottle of water at the weigh-in. These two guys weren't really the same weight. More importantly, Arce has holes in his game, right? Donaire came in prepared to exploit those holes. In the short 3 rounds, you saw Donaire try uppercuts. Donaire, of course, was able to soften up Arce. He even closed the show with his patented left hook. Right? Donaire, quite frankly, in my opinion, is too big for the weight class. We really won't get the opportunity to see Donaire tested until he gains a little bit of weight and he starts fighting the Johnny Gonzalez's and people like that of the world. Right? Daniel Ponce Leon and people like that. For now, though, Donaire is a pretty good bet to end his fights by stoppage unless his opponent can keep him at the end of a jab, and those are few and far between. The guys ruling the roost, quite frankly, down around that weight class, all are volume hard puncher types, right? It's the Abner Marises of the world who come in and try to outwork you. That's not going to work with a technician like Donaire who picks his shots. The problem with coming in and throwing over 100 punches around is that you leave yourself open for counters. And as long as Donaire is able to keep you relatively off of him at a measured pace, and he's able to pick his shots, he'll be able to beat you up. Keep in mind, Abner Maris beat Camito Moreno. The fight, in my opinion, was closer than the scorecards. But Moreno is very different than Donaire, right? Moreno is a stylist, but he's not a big puncher. Donaire is a big puncher, right? Unless you're able to hurt Donaire badly, Donaire's going to take you out if you step to him, right? He's not a guy who's going to let the fight go a lot of rounds. He punches simply too hard. And Abner Maris, let me say, has really been getting away with bum rushing guys, overloading them. Just coming forward on his front foot and outworking his opponents. As Ricky Hatton has found out, that works until you get to the elite level, until you actually start running into elite technicians who counter you and are setting up specific punches. That's who Donaire is. It showed this weekend against Jorge Arce, who was trying to turn it into a brawl and didn't get that opportunity. Take a look at the tape. You're going to see Donaire comes in with specific punches in mind. I'm sure Donaire, in looking at films, knew that Jorge Arce was open for uppercuts, right? I think I may have even mentioned that in passing in my pre-fight video. Donaire came in. He knew Arce's weaknesses. His attack was targeted. Now, I'll say this. There is a film out, in my opinion, that shows how to frustrate Abner Maris. It's the first fight that he had with Joseph Agbeko. That's the low blow fight. And understand Maris was throwing low blows because, like Miguel Cotto against Zab Judah years ago, he was getting frustrated in the ring and he needed a breather. But if you look at that fight, Agbeko did an excellent job of frustrating Maris. He had Maris running into his shoulder for much of the night. I would expect more of the same if Nonito Donaire ends up fighting Abner Maris. Note too, there would be a size difference in that fight. For me, the surprise of the weekend, though, wasn't Nonito Donaire, right? We had the knockout prop there. It was a fight that I didn't make a prediction on because I didn't know what to expect. It was Amir Khan against Carlos Molina. Now, let me just say, this Molina is not the Molina, right, who fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and James Kirkland. This is a different guy. But I was very impressed. Understand, Amir Khan, under Freddie Roach, was an ambush fighter. Now, Khan has very fast hands. Very fast hands. And Khan has a very big punch. But the problem with Khan was that he was predictable. The problem with ambush fighters, think Yorkis Gamboa, hey, I'm just calling it as I see it, is that they're either outside hiding or they're in the middle of an ambush throwing power shots right up on you. Right? The problem is boxing's a little bit more nuanced than that. Right? The guys who really, to me, are the most dangerous fighters are the guys who can literally stand in front of you like Nonito Donaire does and set stuff up, right? Because if I know it's all or nothing, if I know that when you're outside, you're not throwing any punches, then when you run inside, it's going to be a combination. Then I can do to Amir Khan what Paul McCluskey did to Amir Khan. I understand McCluskey didn't win a round, but understand when Khan came in and started throwing his haymakers, there was no element of surprise. McCluskey was able to just cover up, protect himself, right? And quite frankly, that fight was just getting interesting. It was getting to the second half of the fight where Amir Khan has shown fatigue problems, right? Think about Khan against Marcos Maidana, right? Khan has had problems later in fights. Unfortunately, in that fight, there was a cut and it ended the fight, right? Well, Khan now is much more dangerous. Under his new trainer, Virgil Hunter, think Andre Ward, Khan literally is taking his time. He's not doing ambushes. He's not out there, then he's in here, then he's back out there. He's not doing that. Now he's actually the casual neighbor who comes, he's fighting you, but he's battering you with a jab. Right? Now you feel the jab. He's forcing the issue with the jab. Right? Carlos Molina's face got pulverized by Amir Khan's jab. And because Khan is not running, right? If he sees an opening now, he can take advantage with a sledgehammer right hand, right? Khan is offensively gifted. Keep in mind, the hand speed is still there. What's also there now, and it's new, is a defensive construct, right? Khan now keeps his hands up. It's not the shootout Amir Khan who went in against Danny Garcia and fought exactly the wrong fight against a mid-range hooker, right? You don't want to stand at mid-range against a mid-range hooker and try to have a shootout. That's not the way it goes, right? This new Khan actually makes you pay. And let me just say, I believe that new styles on fighters who have fought a long time. Khan had a long amateur career, right? Khan now is in the pros. To learn a new style is going to take a few fights. In my opinion, his next fight should not be against Danny Garcia, who, keep in mind, he has a nickname of Swifty. He throws fast hooks. Garcia seems to be improving from fight to fight, right? I think that's too difficult a fight for Amir Khan. And you know what they say too in boxing? Everyone has a plan until they get hit. Well, that's never more true than when you're in a rematch against a guy you've seen before. I've seen too many fighters get hit against opponents they've seen before, and then they revert back to the first fight, right? You don't want that. If I were Amir Khan, I would work a little bit more with Virgil Hunter before I hop back in the ring with Danny Garcia. Khan has a name. Khan has fans. The fans want to see him successful. They'll be patient. I get the feeling Danny Garcia is going to be around for a while. They'll be patient in waiting for that rematch. Let me make another point too, and it's a significant point. It's one people need to think about. You know, Danny Garcia has the belt at 140. Amir Khan has already beaten the champion at 147 now, Paulie Malignaggi. Were I advising Amir Khan, I would think about having him fight Paulie Malignaggi. Because let's just say, even though Paulie Malignaggi is a champ at 147, I don't think he hits as hard, certainly not with both hands, as 140-pound champion Danny Garcia. So if I were Khan and I'm rebuilding my confidence after a couple of devastating losses, right? Forget the Danny Garcia loss, and let's remember, that was by KO, right? Khan hit the canvas in that fight. He didn't look good in that fight, right? You also had the Lamont Peterson fight, which I know must really eat at Khan, especially given the fact that Peterson then failed performance-enhancing drug tests, right? And so if I'm Khan and if I'm someone in Khan's corner who cares about Khan, I would encourage him to try to challenge Paulie Malignaggi, right? He's beaten Malignaggi already. Not only that, there isn't the same knockout risk. Also, Khan has length on his side now, right? Understand, Khan was giving away his length. He was giving away his size advantage by always jumping in, then hopping back out, right? He'd jump in, he'd bend over, then he would hop back out. Look at him against Paul McCluskey, right? He jumps in, he's throwing. Now he's measured. Now he's more Vitaly Klitschko than an ambush fighter, right? When he comes in, understand that jab, in my opinion, if a guy knows how to throw a real good jab and he has length on his side, the fight doesn't start until his opponent can get by the jab, right? If Amir Khan is able to come in and just play the role of Larry Holmes, he doesn't even need a lot of head movement, and I'll concede, I'm a bit troubled by how stiff his upper body is, right? He doesn't really roll with punches. But like Larry Holmes, if he comes in and he can just pulverize you with that jab, and he knows how to lean back, and he has a reach advantage on you, right? And he also knows how to use the hammer, right? I think Khan could really beat a lot of guys with just the jab and good defense, right? Quite frankly, Khan is as surprising as this new version of Marcos Maidana. It is stunning to see guys well into the game. You know, they fought several fights, they fought championship fights. It's amazing to see a guy retool his game. I thought Khan looked very impressive against Carlos Molina. I thought Khan made that fight a non-fight by coming in, having everything key off a jab, and also not panicking when Molina tried to get inside. This version of Khan looks like he knows how to deal with an opponent's inside game. He's practically a different fighter. I would encourage everyone to look at the Molina tape. I've put snippets of the tape on my channel page. Let me close by talking about the George Groves Glenn Johnson fight. The fight's one-sided. What's really telling in that fight, very telling, it didn't cost him, but it's telling, is when you look at the early rounds of that fight. Glenn Johnson comes out with his hands up, right? Glenn Johnson is gonna defend himself. But even with his hands up, by the end of the first round, Johnson, who hasn't been stopped, knocked out. He's lost fights, but he hasn't been knocked out since the 1990s, despite a reputation for fighting everyone. Right? Think about the guys out there Glenn Johnson has fought. Right? By the end of the first round, Glenn Johnson's in trouble. George Groves hits that hard, even with Glenn Johnson having a high guard. But what's really interesting is in that first round, and keep in mind, I made a pre-fight video where I talked about how Groves actually has really good foot movement. Groves has an excellent jab. Groves could win fights by being Larry Holmes, right? He could literally come in and hit you with a jab and stay out of harm's way. But you'll notice while Glenn Johnson has his hands up, George Groves doesn't. Groves actually comes in from the opening bell, not with his hands up. He has his hands almost at his sides. He has his hands like this. George Groves came in looking for the knockout, right? George Groves came in prepared to throw hard punches in the very first round. And this was against a guy who knocked out Alan Green not that long ago. This was against a guy who actually knocked out Roy Jones Jr. Right? This was against the guy who, even if you want the knockout against him, you would understand that he had gone 12 rounds with Lucien Boutte. He had gone the distance with Carl Froch. Right? This guy, has fought heavy-handed light heavyweights like Clinton Woods. He went the distance with light heavyweight champion Tavoris Cloud. In other words, this guy is a survivor. And yet George Groves came in with his hands not even high, ready to duke it out with him. Now I'll just say this, right? Very impressive performance by George Groves. George Groves did drop Glenn Johnson in the last round. Johnson gets up and finishes the fight because that's Glenn Johnson. He's an OG. He knows how to survive fights. But George Groves really sees himself as a knockout puncher. And I believe that's very important to know, because as he tries to now move up in the ranks, we need to realize that the guys he's going to be fighting, Carl Froch, who stopped Lucien Boutte, right? Carl Froch, who just stopped Yusuf Mack, Andre Ward. It's amazing how the folklore is that Andre Ward doesn't have a punch. Well, someone's going to have to tell that to light heavyweight champion. By the way, he's the current light heavyweight champion, Chad Dawson, who went down multiple times against Andre Ward, right? All I'm saying is if George Groves comes in against guys who aren't in their 40s like Glenn Johnson, younger guys like Carl Froch in his 30s and Andre Ward in his 20s, with the attitude that he's going to duke it out, I'll concede that Groves hits very hard with both hands. He's a very heavy puncher. I'll concede that. But I think he's giving away some of his skills. I think he's giving away some of his advantages. It worked out against Glenn Johnson, right? I'll tell you what, that Francisco Sierra fight, the fight before the Glenn Johnson fight, in my opinion, Groves was this close to getting stopped. right? I don't think it would work out against Andre Ward. I'll just tell you. You come in looking for a knockout. You're over aggressive and you're fighting a technician, right? As Jorge Arce found out this weekend against Donaire. You're fighting a technician who comes in and is looking for specific punches, who has studied your tape and has figured things out, right? Look at Ward, by the way, revisit that Ward-Chad Dawson tape and look at Ward's left hook to the head. I get the feeling Ward came into the fight prepared to throw that punch. He was just looking for the opportunity, right? If George Groves is going to come in with the attitude of, hey, I'm not even going to have my hands up in the first round, right? Against a guy who knocked out Alan Green, I'm going to have my hands here. And if he's going to try to fight the Andre Wards, the Mikhail Kesslers, this is 168, the Carl Froches, I believe he's going to have problems. Anyway, let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online about any fight that took place this weekend. Consider this a weekend roundup video, including fights I haven't discussed. The Arthur Abraham fight, I heard he looked good. I haven't seen that film yet. If you've seen the film, give us a report. Let's have at it here online. Thanks for watching.